I'm Naz. I'm coming to you straight from Venice Beach at our headquarters for LSATMax, and today I want to talk to you a little bit about the reading comprehension section of the LSAT. So the reading comprehension section is slightly different from the other two scored sections in that it's very subjective. So it's one of the hardest sections for students to raise their score in, and ultimately what that ends up in is that students avoid that section. So they'll spend a lot of their time honing their logic game section and their logical reasoning section, and inevitably that ends up with their reading comprehension score dragging down their entire LSAT score. Because remember, it's still a quarter of your entire score. So the issue with the section is that it's really subjective. Everyone reads differently, everyone digests that information differently. So first let's start with the general basics of the section. So the section has 4 different passages. There's always going to be one science-based passage, one humanities passage, one social studies passage, and one legal-based passage. Each passage has somewhere between 5 to 8 questions, and overall the section has around 26 to 28 questions in total. So you have 3 solitary passages and 1 comparative passage. And the comparative passages don't start showing up until June 2007. So a big issue that students encounter is time management on this section. You have 4 long, dense passages that you probably don't want to read and you wouldn't have chosen if it were up to you. So you have to read the entire passage, digest it in detail, understand what's going on in the passage, and then answer the questions in about 8 minutes and 45 seconds per passage to make for that 35-minute mark. Now, I know that seems really daunting, but the way you face the reading comprehension section should be different from, a normal humanities passage. You're not going to be reading between the lines. You're not reading to memorize. You're going to be annotating the passage very minimally so you can create markers to come back to, like creating symbols on a map so that you can just really quickly hone back to that passage and see where the important parts of the passage are. The great thing about the reading comprehension section is that most of the questions are must-be-true questions. So what does that mean? That means that the reading comprehension section actually has an innate check system inside of it. Most of the questions will have corresponding lines in the passage for the correct answers. So if you can't find the line that corresponds to your correct answer, then it's probably not going to be the right answer. The great thing about LSATMax is we actually will give you the liners, so we'll highlight the lines that correspond to the correct answers during your review of your sections. So that way you're going to soon see how straightforward this section is. Because I think a lot of times students are intimidated by the section, but once they start seeing that really the answers are right there in front of them, like right there in the lines, it gets a lot less daunting. As I said, you're not reading to memorize. You're going to be annotating as you read. However, a big time waster on this section is that students end up highlighting the entire passage, or they'll write more text than is in the passage. A great thing that I like doing to stay focused while I'm reading, because again, these are really dense passages, is I just write a few words next to each paragraph, summarizing what that paragraph was about. Like, seriously just shorthand words, not full sentences. You're just writing stuff to remind yourself what you just read, keeping yourself focused. You may not even ever go back to this skeleton structure outline you're creating, but it's helping you stay engaged with what you're reading. Another thing that I like to do, and again, this is subjective, so if it doesn't work for you, that's totally fine. You really need to figure out what annotations help you digest and stay focused the best, and how do you do that with a lot of practice. So the thing that helps me is I'll circle a lot of the names or proper nouns that I see in the passage, again, just to create a marker for myself so that when I see a question that asks me, what was Dr. Jillian's viewpoint as opposed to Dr. Brown's, I'll go and I can find really quickly the parts of the passage that, Dr. Jillian, had her point of view. Another thing that I like to do is I like to underline all the tone words. So these are words that are very emotional or very passionate, because I find that those words really indicate the author's point of view and how the author feels about the passage, because that's really important, and a lot of the questions will go back to how the author feels. Questions like, which one of the following would the author have agreed with? Well, that really goes back to a lot of the tone of the passage from the author. So I underline words like unfortunately, or this grave error. Passionate words. And so I come back to those really passionate words and they help me figure out the tone. Kind of piggybacking on this, the three main things that I always make sure to note when I finish the passage are main point, tone, and purpose. Now, if you have those three things pinpointed, you already have the questions in the bag. Because every question revolves around either the main point, the what of the passage, the tone, the how of the passage, how is the passage being conveyed, and the purpose, why is the passage being conveyed. So during my LSAT prep, I usually take a lot of time, and at the end of the passage, I'll take time to write out what the main point is, what the tone is, and what the purpose is. I'll have the main point, so what is this passage about? Then I'll write down the tone. The tone is usually a word. Happy, sad, upset, confused, angry. And then the purpose is usually, why is the author telling me this? Is he trying to inform me of something? Is he trying to remedy an error? Is he trying to persuade me to think some way? So after I've written those three things down in my LSAT prep, I hit the questions. Now, as you continue to practice writing these down, it's going to become innate that by the end of the passage, you'll just reiterate it in your head. So you don't have to waste that time writing it down while you're taking the practice exam. And lastly, one of the best ways to raise your score on the reading comprehension section is to read more on your off time. So when you're not studying for the LSAT, go ahead and grab some scientific journals, some literary journals, any kind of denser language that you preferably might not be that interested in. Sit down and take the time to read them. Digest that dense information and practice as you're reading, really understanding what the author's saying. Point out those three things in those articles: main point, tone, and purpose. If you want, you can even go so far as practicing annotating that passage, but it's not really that necessary. But really, you want to try and add more to your reading. Actually, LSATMax believes in the power of this for the reading comprehension so much that they actually offer their full course students a subscription to The Economist. It's really, really helpful. And we know how difficult this section of the exam is. It's really different from memorizing specific ways to diagram and certain formulas. It's really subjective. Ultimately, what you want to do is practice and get down your specific way of annotating and digesting. We're here for you. If you have any questions, please give us a call or email us. We know how difficult it can be, and we want to help you with the reading comprehension section and with the LSAT in general. So give us a call. We'd love to hear from you, and I hope you have a great day.